Ruth, for reading that for us. And look, you'll want to find a Bible. So if you haven't got a Bible, you want to get this open in front of you. Mark chapter 4, and we'll be looking at that together. Page 1006. Keep it open in front of you. Now look, I'm aware that we all have fears in life. Those of you who've been around the church for a little while might know that I have a fear of heights. My girls, I've got 3 little girls, they have fears of spiders. I wonder what you fear. Now this week I've had a bit of fun discovering some of the things that people fear. And if you fear any of these things, we're not laughing at you. But here we go. Here's some words up on the screen. Paleidophobia. Has anyone got an idea what this is a fear of? This is a fear of bald people. There we go. Here we go. Next one. Aerophobia. Aerophobia. Has anyone got any idea? It's a fear of drafts. Not fear of aeroplanes, a fear of drafts. How about this one? I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Chaetophobia. Has anyone got any ideas? This is a fear of hairy people. This next one, caliprophobia. Okay, this one's a killer. This is a fear of obscure meanings. Finally, here we go. Phobia. It's a fear of being afraid. I guess there's lots of things that we fear in life, and some of them are rational. Some of them, when you step yourself out of the situation and you kind of have a cooler moment, you think, maybe it's not so rational. But in the passage we had read today, fear, the fear that we meet was completely rational. But the object of the fear was completely unexpected. Now we're looking at one of my favorite incidents in Jesus' life. It'll be really familiar to lots of us. If you've come here today expecting a sermon on anger, that is next week, not this week. But what we've looked at there is taken from Mark's account of Jesus' life. If you're new to Christian things, Mark's gospel was written by Mark. He was probably a traveling companion of Peter. It was most likely Peter's gospel. It's written about 30 years after all the events of Jesus' life. And so people who were around and saw it would have been around when this was in original circulation. And in the story that we are looking at, Jesus' popularity is just growing and growing and growing. And so he needs to take his disciples. They need to have a bit of a break. They need to get away from the crowds. And so he says, we're going to jump on a boat and we're going to head over to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And if you notice verse 35, night is starting to draw in, the sun is setting, and there's a little flotilla of boats making their way to what they think is peace and calm and safety. And they would have been a long way away from where they'd set off, and they would have been a long way away from the shore when the storm breaks out. Have a look at verse 37. It is described as a furious squall. Now that is a really violent and sudden storm. If you know anything about the geography around the Sea of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee is quite a bit below sea level. It's surrounded by some hills, and so storms can break out quite quickly and quite violently. And this was one of those for this little fleet of small fishing boats. And you can tell it's a bad one. Have a look at verse 37. The waves are breaking over the boat, and it was nearly swamped. And the disciples are thinking, we cannot take on any more water and live. What are we going to stop from this boat going under? There's no RNLI to call. It's just us. And so they look and they go to Jesus, who's asleep on a cushion in verse 38. And look at what they say. Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Now just think about the people who are saying this to Jesus. These are not tax accountants. They're not computer programmers. These are fishermen. And fishermen are rock hard. Now, my wife and I, Grace, we started a few years ago. We got into a bit of a habit of watching. It's one of those sort of Channel 5 programs, World's Deadliest Catch, where you see deep sea fishermen heading out on these boats, and you realize as they head out into the deep sea, they are taking their own lives into their hands every time. And these guys who go out, it's big physical work. They are tough people. They have big hands with calluses on them. That's the disciples. They've been in a boat before. They've experienced storms before, but not like this one. They're not overreacting. This storm is so menacing that they honestly think they are going to die. And all the while, Jesus is snoring. He is dribbling into a cushion at the back of the boat. There's a great storm, and Jesus is in a deep sleep. And he's woken up by these big men with big hands shaking him, saying, "We're going to drown. Don't you care?" Verse 39. Jesus gets up and he gets a bucket and he says, "Hold tight, boys. If we pull together, we can get through this. Now let's work in unison. Let's go. Hold on to hope." No, he doesn't. He speaks to the waves. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know how many times you've tried to change the world through speaking. I regularly speak patiently and kindly to my daughters to say to them, please pick up your clothes and either put them in the wash or put them in your drawers. And do you know what? As I say it very patiently and kindly, do you know how long it takes to get them to actually do something? 15th time, where there might be a bit of raised voice. And eventually they will do something. Often I ask my wife, I say to her, "Grace, please, when you finish charging the phone, just switch off at the wall, because even though you've unplugged it, it's still using electricity." And does it affect change? I'll let you decide on that. We all try and use words to affect change in people. Occasionally we use words to try and affect change in pets. Never do we speak to the weather to affect change. You know, you're on a walk on a cliff top. There's not many of those in Norfolk, are there? But there are a few. And you see this menacing looking cloud which is full of dark rain, and it is coming towards you. Have you ever found yourself saying, "Storm, just sort of take a slightly more easterly direction and avoid me, and stop ruining my walk. Please don't dump rain on me"? I mean, have you ever said that? You have? Wow, you're mad. No, you're not mad. We've said it in our hearts, but why do we not say it out loud? Because we cannot change the weather. Our words are not that powerful. They have not that much authority. Jesus speaks to the storm. Interesting, he doesn't just speak. Look at verse 39. He got up and rebuked the wind. He actually tells it off. Like it's a naughty schoolboy who's disgracing himself in front of the whole classroom. He tells off the storm. Quiet. Be still. And here's the thing, the storm obeys. The wind dies completely down. Do you see that? It was completely calm. It was like a mill pond. It was a paddleboarder's dream. You know, if you've ever had experience on the sea or looking out at the sea, you'll know that when the storm dies down, what happens to the waves? they're still rolling and rolling and rolling. It takes hours for the sea to actually calm down, but in an instant, Jesus speaks and it is completely calm. It's supernatural power. It's otherworld authority. But what comes next, I think, is the most surprising. For me, I think this gives this eyewitness account, it gives it a smack of authenticity as to what actually happened. If you were making up this story, if you what would you say at the next point? What would you say the response of the disciples would be? I guess you'd expect them to be on their knees going, "You are God, we worship you. Oh, it's amazing. Look what you've done. Look how you've saved us." But look at what they actually do. Verse 41. They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now look, in our English translation, we slightly miss this. But in verse 37, the furious squall, actually the language for that in the Greek, it was a great storm. Verse 39 followed by not just a calm, but it was a great calm. And verse 41, do you know what they're filled with? Not just fear, but a great fear. In fact, if you were to track this all the way through, they think they're going to drown. But it's only in verse 41 that they reach the maximum amount of their fear. They're terrified in a way that they had never experienced before, even when they were looking into the doorway of death. Because the man that they have been in the boat with, the man they've been following and enjoying his teaching, does what only God, the Creator, can do. And they are terrified of his power. Who is this? I wonder if you've ever found yourself actually ever asking that question of the person of Jesus. And I'm aware because it's a baptism Sunday, some of you might be here because you're friends or guests of some of the people being baptized. But I guess for all of us, we'll have thought a little bit about Jesus. Maybe we'll have grown up and it was mentioned in school assemblies, or maybe we did a little bit in RE, or maybe we went to school chapel. But I wonder if ever as an adult you have come and actually looked at a gospel account with adult eyes and investigated it for yourself. We've got these copies of Mark's Gospel downstairs, and look, it'll take you an hour and a half to read it. Why not take it away after the service and have a look at this account for yourself and say, "Okay, Jesus, let's have a look. What are you about? What are you really like?" Because actually, as you read it, I do not think you can come to any other question than who actually are you? He has split human history in two. The evidence is compelling that he rose from the dead. Who is he? And actually, as we look at these hardened fishermen, looking at the guy they thought who was their mate, going, "Even the winds and the waves obey him." They're actually being confronted with the fact that Jesus is God. And he's not just God come down to say, "Look at me, look at my power." He is God come down to rescue. See, what they experience in small when they're on the boat, as they are on the edge of death, and Jesus stops and calms this storm, is a picture of what he will ultimately do as he comes and dies on the cross for our sin. See, our sin puts us in a state with God where we cannot be with him for all eternity. In fact, we deserve his judgment and the hell that it deserves. And as Jesus steps into our place, saying, "I'll take the punishment you deserve. I love you so much that I'm willing to step and take the full force of God's wrath in your place." As he does that, he is the one who can actually rescue us for himself, who can bring forgiveness, who can bring new life, who can save us to be with him for all eternity. See, Jesus in this moment is giving us a picture of what he will ultimately do. He is God come to save. You know, I guess we've heard from Eloise and John that actually they've said, Jesus has saved me. Have you asked him to come and save you? See, that's the first big thing, and that's the thing we spent most of our time on. But just briefly, there's lots of us who have come to trust in Jesus. And what is the difference of having Jesus on the boat of your life? Well, there's a second thing worth mentioning, and just let's get that up. Jesus is God who brings calm in the storm. See, the storm is over. And verse 40, just have a look at it. What do you expect Jesus to say to them? What do you expect him to say? You expect him to say this. It's okay, guys. We can relax. We're through it. The storm is over. We get to see another day. Come on. No. Look what he says to them. Verse 40. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? You know, he's saying to them, actually, not just now the storm is over, you've got no reason to be afraid. Actually saying more than that. He said they never had a reason to be afraid. Even when the storm was raging, even when he was snoring and it looked like he was asleep on the cushion, and he would have been, he was still in utter control. They had nothing to fear all along. Because Jesus' friends weren't just in the storm, they were in the storm with Jesus. See, remembering that makes all the difference. You know, as long as we are focused on the storm, of course you're going to be scared. Because the thing about the storm is, it's way too big for us. It's way beyond us. But when they focused on Jesus, well, they realized, they should have realized they didn't need to be afraid. The storm was not too big for him. See, I just want to say, in the dark and scary times in our lives, Jesus gives us the same choice. We can focus on our fear, or we can focus on Jesus and remind ourselves he's in control even when we're not. Eloise, John, Finn and Leah in the first service. Jesus, they've welcomed him onto the boat of their life. For so many of us here, we've welcomed Jesus onto the boat of our life, and even in the greatest of storms. Do you know, you can know sometimes he does calm the storm. Often what he does is he leaves the storm, but gives you the peace and the strength to be able to deal with it. But at all times, he will never leave us. He'll never forsake us. When it goes wrong, when we feel like we're getting consumed by the storm, we need to not take our eyes off him. See, the big question we're left with really is, who is this man? Do you believe and trust him for who he says he is? He's the one more terrifying than death. He's God come to deal with chaos in creation and bring us to peace with our Maker and deal with our death, the death we deserve. While he's in the boat, we don't need to fear. So we're going to turn to him in prayer now. Let's bow our heads.